Hello there. Come in. Take the weight off. Welcome to Homemade Audiobooks, the coziest corner of YouTube, a nest where you can settle down, turn the lights low, shut your peepers, and listen in to my homemade narrations of some of my favourite ever tales. These will be slightly over-the-top readings, with silly voices, accents aplenty, and a whole myriad of sound effects, all intended to give you the most immersive experience possible. What's better than reading? Well, listening to someone read to you. If you're enjoying my creations, then head over to Patreon to support my efforts. It would mean ever so much. For now though, let's head off to 1960s New York and the Gothic splendour of the Branford Building. It's time for Ira Levin's legendary horror yarn, Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby, written by Ira Levin, read by Homemade Audiobooks. Part 1, Chapter 9.
Hey, it's after 9, Guy said, shaking her shoulder. She pushed his hand away and turned over onto her stomach. 5 minutes, she said, deep in the pillow. No, he said, and yanked her hair. I gotta be at Dominic's at 10. Eat out. The hell I will. He slapped her behind through the blanket. Everything came back. The dreams, the drinks, Minnie's chocolate mousse, the Pope, that awful moment of not dreaming. She turned back over and raised herself on her arms, looking at Guy. He was lighting a cigarette, sleep-rumpled, needing a shave. He had pyjamas on. She was nude. What time is it? She asked. 10 after 9. What time did I go to sleep? She sat up. About 8:30, he said. And you didn't go to sleep, honey. You passed out. From now on, you get cocktails or wine, not cocktails and wine. The dreams I had, she said, rubbing her forehead and closing her eyes. President Kennedy, the Pope, Minnie and Roman. She opened her eyes and saw scratches on her left breast, 2 parallel hairlines of red running down into the nipple. Her thighs stung. She pushed the blanket from them and saw more scratches, 7 or 8 going this way and that. Don't yell, Guy said. I already filed them down. He showed short, smooth fingernails. Rosemary looked at him uncomprehendingly. I didn't want to miss baby night, he said. You mean you... And a couple of my nails were ragged. While I was out? He nodded and grinned. It was kind of fun, he said, in a necrophile sort of way. She looked away, her hands pulling the blanket back over her thighs. I dreamed someone was raping me, she said. I don't know who, someone unhuman. Thanks a lot, Guy said. You were there, and Minnie and Roman, other people. It was some kind of ceremony. I tried to wake you, he said, but you were out like a light. She turned further away and swung her legs out on the other side of the bed. What's the matter? Guy asked. Nothing, she said, sitting there, not looking around at him. I guess I feel funny about your doing it that way, with me unconscious. I didn't want to miss the night, he said. We could have done it this morning or tonight. Last night wasn't the only split second in the whole month, and even if it had been... I thought you would have wanted me to, he said, and ran a finger up her back. She squirmed away from it. It's supposed to be shared, not one awake and one asleep, she said. Then, I guess I'm being silly. She got up and went to the closet for her housecoat. I'm sorry I scratched you, Guy said. I was a wee bit loaded myself. She made breakfast and, when Guy had gone, did the sinkful of dishes and put the kitchen to rights.
She opened windows in the living room and bedroom. The smell of last night's fire still lingered in the apartment, made the bed and took a shower, a long one, first hot and then cold. She stood, capless and immobile under the downpour, waiting for her head to clear and her thoughts to find an order and conclusion. Had last night really been, as Guy had put it, baby night? Was she now, at this moment, actually pregnant? Oddly enough, she didn't care. She was unhappy, whether or not it was silly to be so. Guy had taken her without her knowledge, had made love to her as a mindless body. Kind of fun, in a necrophile sort of way, rather than as the complete mind and body person she was, and had done so, moreover, with a savage gusto that had produced scratches, aching soreness, and a nightmare so real and intense that she could almost see on her stomach the designs Roman had drawn with his red-dipped wand. She scrubbed soap on herself vigorously, resentfully. True, he had done it for the best motive in the world, to make a baby. And true, too, he had drunk as much as she had, but she wished that no motive and no number of drinks could have enabled him to take her that way, taking only her body without her soul or self or she-ness, whatever it was he presumably loved. Now, looking back over the past weeks and months, she felt a disturbing presence of overlooked signals just beyond memory, signals of a shortcoming in his love for her, of a disparity between what he said and what he felt. He was an actor. Could anyone know when an actor was true and not acting? It would take more than a shower to wash away those thoughts. She turned the water off and, between both hands, pressed out her streaming hair. On the way out to the shop, she rang the Castavet's doorbell and returned the cups from the mousse.
"Did you like it, dear?" Minnie asked. "I think I put a little too much creme de coco in it."
"It was delicious," Rosemary said. "You'll have to give me the recipe."
"I'd love to. You going marketing? Would you do me a teeny favor? 6 eggs and a small instant Sanker. I'll pay you later. I hate going out for just 1 or 2 things, don't you?"
There was a distance now between her and Guy, but he seemed not to be aware of it. His play was going into rehearsal November 1st. Don't I Know You From Somewhere was the name of it, and he spent a great deal of time studying his part, practicing the use of the crutches and leg braces it called for, and visiting the High Bridge section of the Bronx, the play's locale. They had dinner with friends more evenings than not. When they didn't, they made natural-sounding conversation about furniture and the ending any day now newspaper strike and the World Series. They went to a preview of a new musical and a screening of a new movie, to parties and the opening of a friend's exhibit of metal constructions. Guy seemed never to be looking at her, always at a script or TV or at someone else. He was in bed and asleep before she was. One evening he went to the Castavets to hear more of Roman's theatre stories, and she stayed in the apartment and watched Funny Face on TV. "Don't you think we ought to talk about it?" she said the next morning at breakfast. "About what?" She looked at him. He seemed genuinely unknowing. "The conversations we've been making," she said. "What do you mean?" "The way you haven't been looking at me." "What are you talking about? I've been looking at you." "No, you haven't." "I have so. Honey, what's up? What's the matter?" "Nothing. Never mind." No, don't say that. What is it? What's bothering you?" "Nothing." "Ah, look. Honey, I know I've been kind of preoccupied with the part and the crutches and all. Is that it? Oh, gee whiz, Ro, it's important, you know. But it doesn't mean I don't love you, just because I'm not riveting you with a passionate gaze all the time. I've got to think about practical matters, too." It was awkward and charming and sincere, like his playing of the cowboy and bus stop. "All right," Rosemary said. "I'm sorry for being pesty." "You? You couldn't be pesty if you tried." He leaned across the table and kissed her. Hutch had a cabin near Brewster where he spent occasional weekends. Rosemary called him and asked if she might use it for 3 or 4 days, possibly a week. "Guy's getting into his new part," she explained, "and I really think it'll be easier for him with me out of the way." "It's yours," Hutch said, and Rosemary went down to his apartment on Lexington Avenue and 24th Street to pick up the key. She looked in first at a delicatessen where the Clarks were friends from her own days in the neighbourhood,
And then she went up to Hutch's apartment, which was small and dark and neat as a pin, with an inscribed photo with Winston Churchill and a sofa that had belonged to Madame Pompadour. Hutch was sitting barefoot between two bridge tables, each with its typewriter and piles of paper. His practice was to write 2 books at once, turning to the second when he struck a snag on the first, and back to the first when he struck a snag on the second. "I'm really looking forward to it," Rosemary said, sitting on Madame Pompadour's sofa. "I suddenly realized the other day that I've never been alone in my whole life. Not for more than a few hours, that is. The idea of 3 or 4 days is heaven." "A chance to sit quietly and find out who you are, where you've been, and where you're going." "Exactly." "All right, you can stop forcing that smile," Hutch said. "Did he hit you with a lamp?" "He didn't hit me with anything," Rosemary said. "It's a very difficult part. A crippled boy who pretends that he's adjusted to his crippledness. He's got to work with crutches and leg braces, and naturally he's preoccupied and preoccupied." "I see," Hutch said. "We'll change the subject. The news had a lovely rundown the other day of all the gore we missed during the strike. Why didn't you tell me you'd had another suicide up there at Happy House?" "Oh, didn't I tell you?" Rosemary asked. "No, you didn't," Hutch said. "It was someone we knew. The girl I told you about, the one who'd been a drug addict and who was rehabilitated by the Castavets, these people who live on our floor. I'm sure I told you that." "The girl who was going to the basement with you?" "That's right." "They didn't rehabilitate her very successfully, it would seem. Was she living with them?" "Yes," Rosemary said. "We've gotten to know them fairly well since it happened. Guy goes over there once in a while to hear stories about the theatre. Mr. Castavet's father was a producer around the turn of the century." "Shouldn't have thought Guy would be interested," Hutch said. "An elderly couple, I take it?" "He's 79, she's 70 or so." "It's an odd name," Hutch said. "How's it spelled?" Rosemary spelled it for him. "Oh, I've never heard it before," he said. "French, I suppose?" "The name may be, but they aren't," Rosemary said. "He's from right here, and she's from a place called, believe it or not, Bushyhead, Oklahoma." "My God," Hutch said. "I'm going to use that in a book. That one. I know just where to put it. Tell me, how are you planning to get to the cabin? You'll need a car, you know." "I'm going to rent one." "Take mine." "Oh, no, Hutch, I couldn't." "Do, please," Hutch said. "All I do is move it from one side of the street to the other. Please, you'll save me a great deal of bother." Rosemary smiled. "All right," she said. "I'll do you a favour and take your car." Hutch gave her the keys to the car and the cabin, a sketch map of the route, and a typed list of instructions concerning the pump, the refrigerator, and a variety of possible emergencies. Then he put on shoes and a coat and walked her down to where the car, an old light blue Oldsmobile, was parked. "The registration papers are in the glove compartment," he said. "Please feel free to stay as long as you like. I have no immediate plans for either the car or the cabin." "I'm sure I won't stay more than a week," Rosemary said. "Guy might not even want me to stay that long." When she was settled in the car, Hutch leaned in at the window and said, "I have all kinds of good advice to give you, but I'm going to mind my own business if it kills me." Rosemary kissed him. "Thank you," she said, "for that and for this and for everything." She left on the morning of Saturday, 16th of October, and stayed 5 days at the cabin. The first 2 days she never once thought about Guy, a fitting revenge for the cheerfulness with which he had agreed to her going. Did she look as if she needed a good rest? Very well, she would have one, a long one, never once thinking about him. She took walks through dazzling yellow and orange woods, went to sleep early and slept late, read Flight of the Falcon by Daphne du Maurier, and made glutton's meals on the bottle gas stove, never once thinking about him. On the 3rd day, she thought about him. He was vain, self-centred, shallow and deceitful. He had married her to have an audience, not a mate. Little Miss just out of Omaha, what a goop she had been. "Oh, I'm used to actors. I've been here almost a year now." And she had all but followed him around the studio, carrying his newspaper in her mouth. She would give him a year to shape up and become a good husband. If he didn't make it, she would pull out, and with no religious qualms whatever. And meanwhile, she would go back to work and get again that sense of independence and self-sufficiency she had been so eager to get rid of. She would be strong and proud and ready to go if he failed to meet her standards. Those gluttons' meals, man-sized cans of beef stew and chili con carne, began to disagree with her, and on that third day she was mildly nauseated and could eat only soup and crackers. On the fourth day she awoke, missing him, and cried. What was she doing there alone in that cold, crummy cabin? What had he done that was so terrible? He had gotten drunk and had grabbed her without saying, "May I?" Well, that was really an earth-shaking offence now, wasn't it? There he was, facing the biggest challenge of his career, and she, instead of being there to help him, to cue and encourage him, was off in the middle of nowhere, eating herself sick and feeling sorry for herself. Sure, he was vain and self-centred. He was an actor, wasn't he? Laurence Olivier was probably vain and self-centred, and yes, he might lie now and then. Wasn't that exactly what had attracted her and still did? That freedom and nonchalance so different from her own boxed-in propriety. She drove into Brewster and called him. Service answered, the friendly one.
Oh, hi, dear. Are you back from the country? Oh, Guy is out, dear. Can he call you? You'll call him at 5, right. You certainly got lovely weather. Are you enjoying yourself? Good.
At 5 he was still out, a message waiting for him. She ate in a diner and went to the one movie theatre. At 9 he was still out, and service was someone new and automatic with a message for her. She should call him before 8 the next morning, or after 6 in the evening. That next day she reached what seemed like a sensible and realistic view of things. They were both at fault. He for being thoughtless and self-absorbed, she for failing to express and explain her discontent. He could hardly be expected to change until she showed him that change was called for. She had only to talk. No, they had only to talk, for he might be harbouring a similar discontent of which she was similarly unaware, and matters couldn't help but improve. Like so many unhappinesses, this one had begun with silence in the place of honest, open talk. She went into Brewster at 6 and called, and he was there.
Hi, darling,
he said.
How are you?
Fine. How are you?
All right. I miss you.
She smiled at the phone. I miss you, she said. I'm coming home tomorrow.
Good. That's great,
he said.
All kinds of things have been going on here. Rehearsals have been postponed until January.
Oh?
They haven't been able to cast the little girl. It's a break for me, though. I'm going to do a pilot next month, a half-hour comedy series.
You are?
It fell into my lap, bro, and it really looks good. ABC loves the idea. It's called Greenwich Village. It's going to be filmed there, and I'm a way-out writer. It's practically the lead.
Oh, it's marvelous, Guy.
Alan says I'm suddenly very hot.
That's wonderful.
Listen, I gotta shower and shave. He's taking me to a screening that Stanley Kubrick is going to be at. When are you going to get in?
Around noon. Maybe earlier.
I'll be waiting. Love you.
Love you. She called Hutch, who was out, and left word with his service that she would return the car the following afternoon. The next morning, she cleaned the cabin, closed it up and locked it, and drove back to the city. Traffic on the Sawmill River Parkway was bottlenecked by a 3-car collision, and it was close to 1 o'clock when she parked the car half in, half out at the bus stop in front of the Bramford. With her small suitcase, she hurried into the house. The elevator man hadn't taken Guy down, but he had been off duty from 11:15 to 12. He was there, though. The No Strings album was playing. She opened her mouth to call, and he came out of the bedroom in a fresh shirt and tie, headed for the kitchen with a used coffee cup in his hand. They kissed, lovingly and fully, he hugging her, one-armed because of the cup. "Have a good time?" he asked. "Terrible. Awful. I missed you so." "How are you?" "Fine. How was Stanley Kubrick?" "Didn't show the fink." They kissed again. She brought her suitcase into the bedroom and opened it on the bed. He came in with 2 cups of coffee, gave her one, and sat on the vanity bench while she unpacked. She told him about the yellow and orange woods and the still nights. He told her about Greenwich Village, who else was in it, and who the producers, writers, and director were. "Are you really fine?" he asked when she was zipping closed the empty case. She didn't understand. "Your period," he said. "It was due on Tuesday." "It was?" He nodded. "Well, it's just 2 days," she said, matter-of-factly, as if her heart weren't racing, leaping. It's probably the change of water, or the food I ate up there." "You've never been late before," he said. "It'll probably come tonight, or tomorrow." "You want to bet?" "Yes." "A quarter?" "Okay." You're going to lose, Ro.
Shut up. You're getting me all jumpy. It's only 2 days. It'll probably come tonight.